The galaxy was vast, cold, and indifferent. Stars burned brightly, but their light barely reached the edges of space, where silence reigned supreme. It was here, in this desolate corner of the universe, that an ancient signal began to ripple across the cosmos like a whisper carried by the wind. The message was simple yet desperate. We are dying. Please help us. For centuries, no one had paid attention to such pleas. Civilizations rose and fell. Empires expanded and crumbled, but compassion seemed to be a rare commodity among the stars. Advanced species with sleek ships and unimaginable technology chose to look away when weaker ones cried out for aid. Some even mocked them, seeing vulnerability as a flaw unworthy of survival. But this time, something different happened. This time, humanity heard the call. Humanity wasn't supposed to matter. Compared to the millennia-old civilizations scattered throughout the galaxy, Earthlings were infants, barely 200 years into their journey beyond their own solar system. Their ships were slower, their weapons weaker, and their knowledge limited. Yet what they lacked in power, they made up for in curiosity and heart. And so, when the faint transmission from the Caliph reached Earth's deep space listening arrays, it sparked a debate unlike any other. Dr. Elena Voss sat in a dimly lit conference room at the United Earth Space Agency headquarters, her fingers tracing the edge of a data tablet. On the screen before her was the decoded message, fragmented but clear enough to understand its urgency. Beside her stood Commander Marcus Hale, a tall man with sharp features, softened only by the faintest hint of exhaustion around his eyes. He'd spent decades exploring the unknown, always following orders, always doing what he thought was right. Now, he faced perhaps the toughest decision of his career. "We can't just ignore this," Elena said firmly, breaking the tense silence. Her voice carried conviction, though her hands trembled slightly. "If we do nothing, they'll die. An entire civilization will vanish. And for what? Because we're afraid to stick our necks out." Marcus crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy hovering above the table. "It's not about fear," he replied. "It's about resources. We're stretched thin as it is. Helping them means risking everything we've built." "But isn't that why we're here?" Elena shot back. "To prove that we're better than the others. That we won't turn our backs when someone needs us." Her words hung heavy in the air. Around the room, other members of the council exchanged uneasy glances. Some nodded in agreement, others frowned, weighing the risks against potential rewards. News of the Caliph's plight had already spread through Earth's media networks, igniting passionate discussions among the public. While some argued that humanity should focus on its own survival, many more believed that helping the Caliph was the moral thing to do. Finally, after hours of deliberation, the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call, not because it was easy or safe, but because it was right. As the first human vessel prepared to leave for the Caliph's location, Marcus stood on the observation deck, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. He felt a mix of pride and dread. Pride because humanity had chosen a path few others dared to walk. Dread because he knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger. Far away, the Caliph waited, unaware that their plea had finally been heard. For now, hope burned brighter than ever, a tiny flicker of light in the vast, dark void of space. The human delegation's journey to meet the Caliph was long and fraught with uncertainty. The coordinates provided in the distress signal led them deep into uncharted territory, far beyond the borders of known space. Their ship, the Eos, hummed softly as it navigated through asteroid fields and swirling nebulae, its crew tense but determined. For many aboard, this mission represented not just an act of goodwill, but a chance to prove humanity's place among the stars. When they finally arrived at the designated location, what greeted them was both awe-inspiring and heartbreaking. The Caliph's ark-like vessel loomed before them, a colossal structure that seemed more like a floating city than a spaceship. Its once gleaming surface was now pockmarked with scars from countless collisions, and sections of it were dark, lifeless voids where power had failed. It drifted silently against the backdrop of a dying star, its light flickering faintly as if mirroring the fate of those aboard. Commander Marcus Hale ordered the EOs to dock carefully, ensuring their arrival wouldn't cause further damage to the fragile craft. As the airlock hissed open and the boarding party stepped onto the alien ship, they were met by a delegation of Caliph. These beings were unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Tall and willowy, their translucent skin shimmered faintly under the dim artificial lights, and their large, expressive eyes radiated a mixture of sorrow and cautious hope. Dr. Elena Voss took the lead, her voice calm yet firm as she addressed the Caliph leader, a being named Solon. "We've come to help," she said simply, letting her sincerity speak louder than words. Solon inclined his head, a gesture of gratitude so subtle it might have been missed by less observant eyes. "You are the first to answer our call," he replied, his melodic voice tinged with disbelief. "Others, they turned away. Some laughed. Others sought only to profit from our suffering." Elena exchanged a glance with Marcus, who clenched his jaw tightly. They'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed stirred something deep within them. Anger, sadness, and a renewed determination to see this mission through. Over the next few hours, the humans toured the Caliph vessel, learning about their culture and the catastrophe that had befallen them. What they discovered was both fascinating and tragic. The Caliph were not warriors or conquerors. They were artists and philosophers, renowned throughout the galaxy for their ability to create beauty out of chaos. Their homeworld had been a paradise filled with lush forests, crystalline rivers, and towering spires that sang in harmony with the winds. But all of that was gone now, consumed by the veil, a mysterious phenomenon that devoured entire systems without warning. As Elena studied holographic records of the veil's expansion, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than met the eye. The data hinted at patterns, almost as if the anomaly behaved intelligently rather than randomly. Meanwhile, Marcus struggled to reconcile the Caliph's peaceful nature with the harsh realities of survival in space. How could such gentle beings endure the cruelty of the universe? Back on the EOs, tensions simmered among the crew. Lieutenant Raj Patel, the ship's chief engineer, voiced concerns about committing too many resources to the Caliph. "We're risking everything for strangers," he argued during a heated meeting. "What happens if we can't fix this? What happens if we fail?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "Then we'll have tried," she said. "And isn't that better than doing nothing?" Her words silenced the room, leaving behind a fragile sense of unity. Humanity's alliance with the Caliph was tenuous, built on trust earned through compassion rather than strength. Yet even in its fragility, it held promise, a glimmer of hope in a galaxy often devoid of it. As the humans settled into their new reality aboard the Caliph Ark, one thing became clear. Their decision to help would change not only the fate of the Caliph, but also the course of humanity's future among the stars. Dr. Elena Voss spent her days buried in data, her mind racing to piece together the puzzle of the veil. The Caliph had provided her with everything they knew: holographic maps, energy readings, and fragmented logs from their doomed homeworld. But the information only raised more questions than answers. What was the veil? Where did it come from? And why did it seem to target specific systems while leaving others untouched? The work was exhausting, but Elena refused to slow down. She spent hours in the dimly lit lab aboard the Caliph Ark, surrounded by humming machines and glowing screens. Her hands moved quickly as she analyzed patterns in the energy signatures emitted by the veil. At first glance, they appeared random, chaotic bursts of radiation that defied explanation. But the longer she studied them, the more she began to see something else: order hidden within the chaos. "Look at this," she said one evening, calling Commander Marcus Hale over to her workstation. On the screen was a series of waveforms, each pulsating in a rhythmic pattern. "These aren't natural. They're deliberate." Marcus frowned, leaning closer to examine the display. "You think someone created the veil?" "I don't just think it. I'm almost certain of it, Alina replied, her voice tinged with both excitement and dread. Whoever made this didn't just unleash destruction. They designed it. It's too precise, too calculated. Her revelation sent shockwaves through the team. If the veil was artificial, then its creators must have possessed technology far beyond anything humanity or the Caliph could comprehend. But who were they? And what had driven them to create such a devastating force? Solon, the Caliph leader, joined them later that day, his translucent form shimmering faintly in the low light. When Alina explained her findings, his expression darkened. Legends speak of an ancient race known as the Precursors, he said softly. They were said to be masters of creation and destruction, capable of bending reality itself. Some believe they seeded life across the galaxy, while others claim they sought to control it. And you think they might be responsible for the veil? Marcus asked. Solon nodded gravely. If the legends are true, then the veil may not simply be a weapon. It could be a prison. Alina's heart skipped a beat. A prison? For what? The implications were staggering. If the veil contained something dangerous enough to warrant imprisonment by the Precursors, then interfering with it could unleash horrors beyond imagination. Yet doing nothing meant condemning the Caliph, and possibly the entire galaxy, to extinction. Determined to uncover more, Alina delved deeper into the Caliph archives. Late one night, she stumbled upon a fragment of code embedded within an old star map. It was unlike anything she'd seen before, a language composed entirely of geometric shapes and shifting colors. Though incomprehensible at first, she realized it wasn't meant to be read. It was meant to be felt. With Solon's help, she used the Caliph's sensory interface to experience the message directly. Waves of emotion washed over her: fear, despair, and an overwhelming sense of entrapment. Then came a single word, repeated over and over in her mind: free. Shaken, Alina returned to the lab to share her discovery with Marcus. Whatever is inside the veil, it's alive, she said, her voice trembling. And it wants out. Marcus stared at her, his face pale. So we're dealing with a sentient being trapped inside a cosmic cage. It looks that way, Alina admitted. But here's the thing. If we can understand how the veil works, maybe we can find a way to neutralize it without setting whatever's inside free. Her words offered a glimmer of hope, but the stakes had never felt higher. As they prepared to investigate further, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with forces far beyond their understanding. The veil wasn't just a mystery, it was a warning. And humanity's decision to unravel it would test the limits of courage, ingenuity, and morality. For now, though, there was no turning back. News of humanity's involvement with the Caliph spread like wildfire across the galaxy, igniting debates in every corner of known space. For centuries, the galactic community had thrived on a delicate balance of power, where alliances were forged not out of trust but convenience, and compassion was seen as weakness. Humanity's decision to help the Caliph, a dying race deemed insignificant by most, was met with equal parts disbelief and disdain. The EO's crew quickly learned that their mission wasn't just about saving the Caliph. It was also about navigating a political minefield. Powerful empires, such as the Zoreth Dominion and the Valen Collective, began sending envoys to monitor the situation. Some claimed they wanted to assist humanity, while others made no secret of their opposition. "You're meddling in affairs you don't understand," warned Ambassador Crix, a reptilian diplomat from the Zoreth Dominion. His cold, calculating eyes bore into Commander Marcus Hale during a tense video conference. "The veil is not your concern. Leave it alone, or face the consequences." Marcus clenched his fists beneath the table, but kept his tone steady. "With respect, Ambassador, we didn't come here for permission. We came to do what's right." Crix sneered, baring rows of sharp teeth. "Righteousness won't save you when the galaxy turns against you." While some factions openly criticized humanity, others worked behind the scenes to sabotage their efforts. Supplies meant for the Caliph mysteriously vanished en route, replaced by counterfeit goods that malfunctioned under pressure. A repair drone exploded aboard the Ark, nearly killing 2 engineers. The incident was ruled an accident, but Marcus suspected otherwise. Tensions aboard the EOS grew as well. Lieutenant Raj Patel, who had always been skeptical of the mission, confronted Elena in the lab one evening. "This isn't worth it," he said, his voice low but intense. "We're risking everything. For what? A bunch of aliens who can't even protect themselves." Elena turned to face him, her expression calm but firm. "They're not a bunch of aliens. They're sentient beings, just like us. And if we walk away now, we're no better than the ones who abandoned them." Raj hesitated, then shook his head. "I hope you're ready to deal with the fallout when this all goes sideways." His words lingered in Elena's mind long after he left. She knew he wasn't entirely wrong. The risks were enormous. But giving up wasn't an option. Not yet. Things came to a head when one of their supply ships, carrying critical components for their research, was destroyed near the edge of the Veil. The official report blamed a collision with debris, but Marcus refused to accept it. He ordered an investigation, personally leading a team to examine the wreckage. What they found confirmed his worst fears: tampered navigation systems and traces of foreign tech embedded in the ship's core. Someone had deliberately sabotaged them. Back on the Ark, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. "We've got a traitor among us," he announced grimly. "Whoever it is, they're working for someone outside this mission. I need everyone on high alert." The revelation sent shockwaves through the crew. Trust, already fragile, began to crumble. Suspicion fell on several members, including a communications officer who had recently received encrypted messages from an unknown source. When questioned, she denied any wrongdoing, but her evasive answers only deepened the mistrust. As accusations flew and tempers flared, Elena reminded herself why they were there. The Caliph depended on them, not just for survival, but for hope. Betrayal may have struck at their backs, but it couldn't extinguish the fire that had brought them this far. In the end, Marcus made a difficult choice. He assigned additional security to key personnel and doubled down on their mission, refusing to let fear dictate their actions. "We'll find the traitor," he told Elena later that night, his voice heavy with determination. "But until then, we keep moving forward, no matter what." And so, amidst betrayal and danger, humanity pressed on, clinging to the belief that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, light could still prevail. The destruction of the supply ship was a devastating blow, not just to morale, but to the mission itself. The components lost in the explosion were critical for constructing the experimental device humanity hoped would counteract the Veil. Without them, progress ground to a halt, leaving the team stranded between despair and determination. But if there was one thing that defined humanity, it was resilience and an unshakable drive to innovate when faced with impossible odds. Dr. Elena Voss gathered her team in the lab, their faces pale with exhaustion yet lit by flickering screens. "We can't wait for replacements," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "If we don't find another way, the Caliph won't survive, and neither will we." Her words sparked a flurry of activity. Engineers, scientists, and even volunteers from the Caliph worked around the clock, pooling their knowledge and resources. The humans brought ingenuity and brute force problem solving, while the Caliph contributed centuries of expertise in energy manipulation. Together, they began designing a new prototype, a hybrid machine that combined human engineering with Caliph artistry. Lieutenant Raj Patel, despite his earlier doubts, threw himself into the project with relentless focus. His hands moved deftly over circuits and wires, his brow furrowed in concentration. "If this works," he muttered to Elena one night as they reviewed schematics, "it'll be a miracle." "It has to work," she replied softly, though her eyes betrayed her own fears. "Because if it doesn't..." She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Progress came at great cost. Sleep became a luxury few could afford, and the strain began to show. Tempers flared during disagreements over design flaws, and mistakes led to small explosions that singed walls and burned skin. Yet no one walked away. Each setback only fueled their resolve to try again. Back on Earth, news of the sabotage reached the public, sparking outrage and division. Some called for the mission to be abandoned, arguing that humanity had done enough. Others rallied behind the crew, organizing fundraisers and campaigns to send additional supplies. Despite the growing controversy, the United Earth Space Agency stood firm, pledging its full support to see the mission through. But sacrifices weren't limited to physical labor or political battles. Personal costs weighed heavily on the team. Dr. Lila Chen, a brilliant astrophysicist, collapsed from exhaustion after working nonstop for 3 days straight. When she woke up in the medical bay, her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold a pen. Still, she insisted on returning to the lab. "I'm fine," she told Marcus when he tried to order her to rest. "We don't have time for weakness." Even Alina wasn't immune. Her once bright eyes grew hollow, shadows deepening under them as sleep eluded her. Late one night, Solon found her hunched over a workstation, staring blankly at a screen filled with equations. "You are pushing yourself too hard," he said gently, his voice like a soft breeze. "I don't have a choice," she whispered, her voice cracking. "If I stop, if any of us stop, everything falls apart." Solon placed a shimmering hand on her shoulder, his touch cool and calming. "Your strength is admirable, but it is not infinite. Trust in your team. You do not carry this burden alone." His words struck a chord. Reluctantly, Alina allowed herself a few hours of rest, though her dreams were haunted by visions of the veil swallowing stars whole. As the prototype neared completion, the crew held their breaths, knowing that failure would mean the end, not just for the Caliph, but for humanity's fragile foothold in the galaxy. Every weld, every calculation, every adjustment carried the weight of countless lives. Finally, after weeks of relentless effort, the machine stood ready, a towering structure of metal and light, humming with potential energy. It was imperfect, patched together from scraps and sheer willpower, but it represented something greater than its parts. It was proof that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity refused to give up. When Marcus addressed the team before the first test run, his voice was steady but filled with emotion. "This isn't just about saving the Caliph," he said. "It's about proving that compassion and courage still matter in a universe that often feels cold and indifferent. Whatever happens next, I'm proud to stand with all of you." As the machine powered up, hope burned brighter than ever, a fragile flame in the vast darkness of space. The prototype machine hummed to life, its surface glowing faintly as energy coursed through its intricate systems. The air aboard the Caliph Ark crackled with anticipation and unease. Humanity's first test of their invention would take place near the edge of the veil, close enough to gather critical data, but far enough, at least theoretically, to avoid triggering a catastrophic reaction. Commander Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of the Eos, his jaw tight as he watched the swirling anomaly grow larger in the viewport. "All hands, prepare for deployment," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his chest. He glanced at Dr. Alina Voss, who was adjusting the final settings on her tablet. Her face was pale but resolute, her eyes fixed on the task ahead. As the ship approached the veil, an eerie silence fell over the crew. Even the hum of the engines seemed muted, as if the anomaly itself demanded reverence. Then, without warning, the machine emitted a low-frequency pulse that resonated through the hull. Lights flickered, and for a moment, it seemed like the entire system might fail. But then, something extraordinary happened. A shimmering probe emerged from within the veil, its surface shifting between metallic hues and translucent waves. It hovered silently before them, radiating an aura of ancient power. This was no ordinary machine. It was unmistakably a relic of the precursors, the mysterious creators of the veil. Dr. Alina stepped forward, her heart pounding as she studied the probe. Its design defied logic, appearing both solid and fluid, tangible yet intangible. She reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against a control panel. The probe responded instantly, projecting holographic patterns into the air, geometric shapes, spiraling fractals, and flowing streams of light that pulsed in rhythm with an unseen heartbeat. "It's communicating," Elena whispered, her voice filled with awe. But not in words. The patterns shifted, growing more complex. Images began to form, visions of stars collapsing, worlds burning, and civilizations crumbling under the weight of despair. Then came flashes of something else, a monstrous entity wrapped in shadow, its presence suffused with malice and hunger. The entity stretched toward the viewer, its form shifting uncontrollably, as though struggling against invisible chains. Solon, standing nearby, let out a soft gasp. That is what lies within the veil," he murmured, his voice trembling. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The entity wasn't just dangerous, it was alive, and it wanted freedom. The probe's message grew clearer, though still abstract. Fragments of understanding filtered into Elena's mind, bypassing language entirely. The veil wasn't merely a prison, it was a containment field designed to suppress the entity's influence. However, maintaining it required immense energy, which had been draining steadily over millennia. If left unchecked, the veil would collapse entirely, releasing the entity to wreak havoc across the galaxy. But there was another revelation, one that sent shockwaves through the team. Destroying the veil outright risked unleashing the entity prematurely. Instead, the probe suggested a different approach, neutralizing the anomaly by harmonizing with its structure, effectively reprogramming it to stabilize rather than consume. "This is insane," Lieutenant Raj Patel muttered, shaking his head. "We're supposed to rewrite something built by the precursors. What if we make things worse?" "We don't have a choice," Elena replied firmly. "If we do nothing, the veil collapses anyway. At least this way, we have a chance." Marcus crossed his arms, his expression grim. "And how exactly are we supposed to harmonize with it? This isn't some science experiment. It's alien tech beyond anything we've ever seen." Elena hesitated, then turned to Solon. "You said your people create beauty out of chaos, art that channels emotion into reality. Could you use that same principle here? To translate feelings into frequencies that resonate with the veil?" Solon's eyes widened slightly. "It is possible," he admitted, "but such an endeavor would require great precision and great sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Marcus asked sharply. Before Solon could answer, the probe emitted a final burst of light, bathing the room in brilliance. When the glow faded, the message was clear. Humanity and the Caliph were running out of time. As the team prepared to integrate Caliph artistry with human engineering, one thing became certain. Their next steps would test not only their ingenuity but also their willingness to pay the ultimate price. The discovery of the precursor probe brought both clarity and chaos. While humanity and the Caliph now understood the true nature of the veil, the revelation also deepened divisions among the crew. Suspicion and paranoia simmered just beneath the surface, fueled by weeks of sabotage attempts and mounting pressure. Everyone knew that failure meant disaster, but success came at a cost no one fully understood yet. Dr. Elena Voss worked tirelessly alongside Solon to refine their plan, combining Caliph artistic techniques with human engineering. The prototype machine was reprogrammed to generate harmonic frequencies based on emotional resonance, a concept as alien to humans as it was intuitive to the Caliph. But even as progress accelerated, cracks began to form within the team. Late one night, Lieutenant Raj Patel stormed into the lab, his face flushed with anger. "We're wasting time," he snapped, slamming his fist onto the table. "This isn't science, it's guesswork. We're gambling everything on some abstract idea of art stopping an unstoppable force." Elena turned to face him, her patience wearing thin. "It's not guesswork," she said firmly. "We've seen what happens when we try brute force. If we don't adapt, If we don't think differently, we'll lose. And who decides how far we go? Raj shot back. You? Him. He gestured sharply towards Solon, whose expression remained calm but unreadable, or whoever's been leaking our plans to the Zorith Dominion. Don't tell me you haven't thought about it. The accusation hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Everyone had suspected betrayal after the supply ship explosion, but pointing fingers only widened the rifts. Marcus entered the room moments later, drawn by the raised voices. His eyes swept over the group, landing finally on Raj. "That's enough," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut steel. "If you have proof someone's working against us, speak up. Otherwise, focus on the mission or step aside." Raj clenched his jaw, but didn't argue further. Instead, he turned and stalked out of the lab, leaving behind a tense silence. Hours later, the traitor revealed themselves, not through words, but action. During a critical systems check, alarms blared as unauthorized commands disrupted the machine's calibration. Elena rushed to the control panel, her fingers flying over the keys as she traced the source of the breach. Her stomach sank when she found it. Encrypted signals being sent directly from inside the Ark. "Marcus," she called urgently. He arrived seconds later, his hand resting instinctively on the hilt of his sidearm. Together, they followed the signal to a secluded maintenance bay where Lieutenant Puddle stood fiddling with a portable transmitter. When confronted, he didn't deny his actions. Instead, he met their gazes defiantly. "I did what I had to do," Raj said, his voice trembling with frustration. "You're leading everyone to their deaths. The Zoriths promised protection. For Earth, for my family. All you're doing is delaying the inevitable." Marcus stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You betrayed us. You betrayed the Caliph. And worst of all, you betrayed humanity." Before Raj could respond, Solon appeared unexpectedly, his shimmering form radiating an almost ethereal calm. "Enough blood has been spilled," he said softly. "Let this moment serve as a reminder of why we fight, not for power or fear, but for hope." Though Raj was placed under arrest, the damage was done. Trust dissolved completely, replaced by wary glances and whispered conversations. Yet amidst the turmoil, determination burned brighter than ever. "We can't let this stop us," Alina declared during a somber meeting with the remaining crew. "If anything, it proves we're on the right path. They wouldn't sabotage us if they didn't think we could succeed." Her words reignited a flicker of resolve. With renewed urgency, the team prepared for the final phase of their plan. As the machine hummed to life once more, each member silently vowed to see it through, even if it meant risking everything. For humanity, there would be no turning back. The final stage of humanity's mission was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Armed with their reprogrammed machine and the combined knowledge of human engineering and Caliph artistry, the crew prepared to venture closer to the Veil than ever before. It wasn't just a test, it was an expedition into the unknown, a journey that would either save countless lives or unleash unimaginable destruction. Commander Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of the Eos, his hands gripping the railing as he stared at the swirling anomaly ahead. The Veil loomed larger now, its edges shimmering like molten glass, while tendrils of dark energy snaked outward, consuming everything in their path. Stars flickered and died within its grasp, leaving behind a void so profound it seemed to swallow light itself. "This is it," Marcus said quietly, turning to address the team gathered behind him. "We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. Whatever happens next, know that you've given everything to make this possible." Dr. Elena Voss adjusted the straps of her environmental suit, her heart pounding as she double-checked the equipment strapped to her back. She carried a portable version of the harmonic generator, designed to emit frequencies capable of interacting directly with the Veil's structure. Beside her, Solon stood tall, his translucent form glowing faintly with anticipation, or perhaps fear. "We must remain focused," Solon said, his melodic voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The entity inside the veil will resist us. It will try to break our resolve. But we must not falter. As the Eos approached the core of the veil, the ship shuddered violently, buffeted by waves of chaotic energy. Alarms blared, and red warning lights bathed the interior in an ominous glow. Lieutenant Annika Torres, the ship's pilot, gritted her teeth as she fought to maintain control. "Hull integrity at 60%, she called out. "If we go any deeper, we risk losing structural stability." "Hold steady," Marcus ordered. "Just a little farther." Finally, they'd reached the designated coordinates, a nexus point where the veil's energy pulsed most intensely. Here, the machine would be deployed, and Elena would take the lead, stepping outside the safety of the ship to become the living conduit for the symphony of light and sound. Clad in her suit, Elena stepped into the airlock, her breath fogging the visor of her helmet. As the outer door opened, she was greeted by a sight that defied description. The veil stretched infinitely around her, a kaleidoscope of colors and shadows twisting together in a maddening dance. At its center lay the entity, a monstrous shape writhing in agony, its form constantly shifting between recognizable shapes and incomprehensible horrors. Activating the harmonic generator, Elena began transmitting the carefully crafted frequencies. The air vibrated with a deep, resonant hum, growing louder and more complex with each passing second. Shapes formed in the chaos, patterns of light that mirrored the emotions channeled by the Caliph's artistry: hope, courage, unity. But the entity fought back. Waves of oppressive despair crashed over Elena, threatening to overwhelm her mind. Her knees buckled under the weight of it, but she forced herself to stand. "Not today," she whispered through clenched teeth. Inside the ship, the crew watched anxiously as readings fluctuated wildly. Solon closed his eyes, channeling his people's collective strength into the signal, amplifying Elena's efforts. For a moment, it seemed like the plan might fail. The entity surged forward, its shadowy tendrils reaching for Elena. But then, something miraculous happened. The frequencies synchronized perfectly, creating a harmonic resonance that pierced through the darkness. Light erupted from the machine, flooding the void with brilliance. For the first time, the entity recoiled, its screams echoing across space. "It's working," someone shouted, though no one dared celebrate yet. As the light grew brighter, Elena felt a strange warmth spread through her body. She realized then what Solon had meant about sacrifice. To stabilize the veil, someone would need to stay, to become part of the harmony itself. With tears streaming down her face, Elena made her choice. The light surrounding Elena was blinding, yet strangely comforting. It pulsed in rhythm with the harmonic frequencies she had unleashed, intertwining with the chaotic energy of the veil. For a moment, she felt connected to something far greater than herself, a symphony of creation and destruction, life and death, hope and despair. But as the entity within the veil recoiled, its resistance grew fiercer. Shadowy tendrils lashed out, trying to smother the light and drag her into the abyss. Elena knew what needed to be done. She glanced back at the ship, where Commander Marcus Hale stood frozen by the viewport, his face pale with horror. Their eyes met through the thick glass, and for a fleeting second, no words were necessary. He understood. "Elena, don't," Marcus shouted, his voice breaking over the comm system. "We can find another way." "There isn't one," she replied softly, her voice calm despite the storm raging around her. "This is the only way to save them, to save all of us." Her hands moved steadily over the controls of the portable generator, adjusting the frequency to stabilize the resonance. The machine hummed louder, vibrating against her chest as if it were alive. She could feel its power coursing through her veins, merging with her very essence. Inside the ship, Solon placed a shimmering hand on Marcus's shoulder. "She has chosen," he said quietly. "Do not dishonor her sacrifice by doubting her resolve." Marcus clenched his fists, fighting back tears. He wanted to argue, to demand they pull her back inside, but deep down, He knew there was no other choice. Elena had always been willing to give everything for this mission, even when others hesitated. Now she was doing just that. Back outside, Elena closed her eyes, letting the music of the universe wash over her. The Caliph's artistry flowed through the harmonics, painting emotions into reality. Hope bloomed like sunlight breaking through clouds. Courage surged like a tidal wave. Unity bound them all together, human and alien alike. The entity screamed again, its form twisting violently as the light consumed it. Slowly, painfully, the shadows began to recede, drawn back into the core of the veil. The anomaly itself started to shrink, its edges stabilizing as the harmonics rewrote its structure. Elena felt the weight of eternity pressing down on her. Her body trembled under the strain, but she held firm, focusing every ounce of her willpower on maintaining the connection. She thought of Earth, the blue skies, the laughter of children, the endless possibilities of humanity's future. She thought of the Caliph, their gentle wisdom and unwavering gratitude. And she thought of Marcus, standing helplessly aboard the Eos, watching her fade away. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was apologizing to. As the final notes of the symphony resonated through space, the veil stabilized completely. Its once chaotic energy settled into a steady hum, harmless and contained. Stars beyond it flickered back to life, their light piercing the darkness that had threatened to consume them. But Elena was gone. The portable generator floated silently in the void, its lights dimming as the last echoes of the symphony faded. Back aboard the Eos, silence fell over the crew. Tears streamed down faces, but there was also pride, a quiet acknowledgement of the extraordinary act of selflessness they had just witnessed. Solon bowed his head reverently. "She has become part of the harmony," he said. "Her sacrifice will be remembered forever, not just by us, but by all who lived because of her." Marcus stared out at the now stable veil, his heart heavy with grief. Yet amidst the sorrow, he felt a spark of determination reignite within him. Elena had given everything so they could continue. They owed it to her, and to the galaxy, to ensure her sacrifice wasn't in vain. As the Eos turned away from the veil, heading back toward the Caliph Ark, Marcus made a silent vow. Humanity would honor Elena's legacy by continuing to stand as a beacon of hope in the cosmos. No matter how dark the universe became, they would never stop fighting for what was right. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of space, the light of Elena Voss burned brightly, a star among stars, guiding the way forward. The return journey to the Caliph Ark was somber, each member of the crew grappling with their own emotions. The loss of Dr. Elena Voss weighed heavily on everyone, but her sacrifice had not been in vain. The veil was stable once more, its destructive hunger neutralized. For the first time in centuries, the Caliph dared to dream of rebuilding what they had lost, and humanity stood as a testament to the power of compassion and unity. As the Eos docked with the Ark, Commander Marcus Hale stepped onto its dimly lit corridors, his face etched with exhaustion. Solon greeted him, his translucent form shimmering faintly under the artificial lights. Though grief lingered in his eyes, there was also gratitude, a deep, unshakable appreciation for everything humanity had done. "You have given us a future," Solon said softly, inclining his head in respect. "And you have shown us that even in our darkest moments, hope can prevail." Marcus nodded, though his throat tightened at the words. "Elena believed in that hope," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "She gave everything so we could get here. It's up to us now, to all of us, to make sure her sacrifice means something." The Caliph wasted no time preparing to reclaim their homeworld. With the veil stabilized, they began planning expeditions to assess the damage and begin reconstruction. They shared fragments of their knowledge with humanity. Advanced energy manipulation techniques, artistic methods that bridged emotion and technology, and insights into the precursor's enigmatic legacy. These gifts accelerated Earth's technological advancement, earning humanity newfound respect among the galactic community. But the impact of humanity's actions extended far beyond material gains. News of their selfless intervention spread throughout the galaxy, challenging long-held prejudices about Earthlings being young and naive. Powerful empires like the Zorith Dominion and the Valen Collective found themselves forced to reconsider their dismissive attitudes. Some grudgingly acknowledged humanity's bravery. Others quietly sought alliances, recognizing the potential benefits of befriending such an unpredictable yet determined species. Back on Earth, public opinion shifted dramatically. Once divided over whether aiding the Caliph was worth the risk, humanity now rallied behind its representatives in space. Monuments were erected in Alina's honor, her name etched into history alongside those who had shaped the course of civilizations. Schools taught her story as an example of courage and selflessness, inspiring generations to come. For Marcus, however, life remained bittersweet. He carried Alina's memory with him always, a quiet ache that never fully faded. Yet he also found solace in knowing that her light continued to shine, not just in the stabilized Vale or the rebuilt Caliph homeworld, but in the hearts of every human who looked to the stars with hope instead of fear. Months later, as the Eos prepared to depart for Earth, Solon approached Marcus one final time. In his hands, he held a small crystalline orb, glowing faintly with iridescent hues. "This is a fragment of our art," Solon explained. "It contains the essence of harmony, the same resonance Alina helped create. Keep it as a reminder of what was achieved, and of the bond between our peoples." Marcus accepted the orb, feeling its warmth seep into his palm. "Thank you," he said simply, unable to find words profound enough to express his gratitude. As the Eos left the Ark behind, heading toward the blue dot of Earth in the distance, Marcus stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. The galaxy was still vast and often cruel, but it no longer felt indifferent. Humanity had proven that even amidst the cold void of space, acts of kindness could ignite change. And somewhere, in the endless expanse of the cosmos, the symphony of light played on, a melody born from sacrifice, courage, and hope. It reminded them all that no matter how daunting the challenges ahead, humanity would always choose to help, to heal, and to shine. A new dawn had broken, not just for the Caliph, but for all who dared to believe in a better future.